Okay, this is just going to be a really quick down and dirty kind of video of pre-drafting. I've had this question several times over the last little while, and I've been spinning for 20 years and I still pre-draft when I'm spinning. It's not a sign of weakness that some people might think of, but to me it's just a way to get more consistent yarn with the least amount of effort. If you have a preparation like this is Shetland, hasn't been dyed, minimal processing, so you can see it's pretty open. This one has been dyed and you can see that it's much more compacted, which often happens when you've got a dyed roving. And especially if you're a beginning spinner, trying to manage learning how to treadle, how your spinning wheel operates, and then also how to draft all at the same time, it's really unnecessary pressure. So what I do is, first of all, you always want to know how long the staple is, how long the length of the fibers are in your preparation, because if you're trying to draft and you're holding your hands too close together, you're pulling on both ends of the fiber and it's not going to move and it's going to be really frustrating. So if you know this one is, I don't know, maybe 4 inches, 5 inches, so I know when I'm drafting this I need to have my hands quite far apart. So the first thing I do is I will separate my roving into strips like this, and then I pinch off about 2 fingers worth. That's a little more. And then I start at the end, at the very end, and I just very gently pull it out. And I'm kind of pulling it together. And you can see already that this is going to be much easier to draft and spin than using this entire big piece of roving. Some people do it and there's nothing wrong with that. I just find it easier and I get a more consistent product at the end of the day. But especially for beginners, this does 2 things. One, it gives you a head start on the drafting, but it also, if the fiber has been compacted, it also will open it up a little bit so that it's not quite so sticky on itself, because that can also be a frustration. So you see I'm keeping my hands pretty far apart because this is a pretty long staple of fiber, and I'm just gently, and don't try to do too much at one time. You can go through it multiple times if you need it to be finer. So you're not trying to get it to a finished product in the first go of this. You're just trying to get it started. And see, now my fingers are getting closer together and it's not moving quite as much. So I'm just going to move my backhand back a little bit. And I'm just kind of keeping it together so that it doesn't spread out too much. I'm even, if you can see, just lightly twisting it just to kind of keep the individual fibers manageable. And so I do this, and it can go much faster than this. I'm just doing it more slowly so you can see what I'm doing. But I find this quite relaxing. And I'm working my way through to the end. And obviously as I get close to the end, I'm going to need to manage it a little bit because of the length of the fibers. And so I'm pulling very, very gently, And this is pretty open, so it moves pretty easily. So now I've got my little strip of fiber ready to spin, and I just kind of wrap it up. I think I heard somebody call this a bird's nest at one time, but I just wrap it up. Then it's manageable, and then it's ready to spin. And I can do multiple of these and just have them ready and add each one to the back of the other as I go. So that's a beautiful preparation of fiber to begin with, but it's just taking a more manageable piece of it. So this one, as you can see, is much denser. I think this is probably, if I remember right, this is a blue face Leicester maybe. But anyway, so I'm just gonna, this one is gonna need pre-drafting much more than this one does. But anyway, I strip off a piece, just like I did with the other one, and we'll see the staple length on this is probably about the same. It's probably hard for you to see that little bit there, but it's probably the same as the other one. But I'm just going to very gently, and this one, because it's so tight, if I just kind of pop it, I am holding it on purpose on either end of the fiber, and I'm just kind of popping it, and you can see how that already starts to open it up. And that can be really helpful if you've got a really compacted roving, and often if it's dyed, it will be more compact just by virtue of the action of the water and the dye process. But now I'm kind of, and I'm having to be a little more forceful with this just because it doesn't move as easily as that other one. But you see, as I start to pull it, can you see how the difference in that? How this is now opened up a little more already, but it's a little more work because it is more compacted, but it's even more reason to pre-draft. But you can see it's sliding, but I am having to put a little more pressure and pay even more attention to, oops, see there, it pulled together. So I'm gonna lap it over and start again so that I don't have, because you can get really narrow bits of it, and that can be a problem while you're spinning. So you just want to gently pull. It'll also give you an idea of how, a feel of how the fiber moves on itself, and that can give you clues when you're spinning it how to better draft it. If you may need to put it on maybe a slower whirl so that you're not getting as much twist in as quickly, so that you have time to actually draft this. That's often, especially for beginners, it's an issue because you're treadling away, you're trying to keep your little feet moving, but the fiber's not cooperating, and so you get way too much twist into it before you actually have it drafted enough to pull onto the bobbin. So if you're having that problem of getting too much twist in too quickly, just move to a slower whirl, because your natural treadling speed, you're not really going to change that. It's much more difficult. Let me put it this way. It's more difficult to change your treadling speed than it is to just use a slower whirl. And as you're trying to put all the pieces together, if you're having to fight with the fiber on top of having to learn all the different pieces, it can get very frustrating, and you might want to step away from it. And I don't want you to step away from it. I want you to step into it and get some fiber that'll cooperate with you. So now you see the difference in this versus what I pulled it off of. And I've got quite a long, and I would still draft this as I'm spinning probably, just depending on what size of yarn I would be looking to make. But that's just my little tip of how to pre-draft and why to pre-draft and why it makes sense, especially if you're just learning to spin. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll be happy to jump in and tell you whatever I know or what I think. I appreciate it. Bye.